Steve Sarkisian has Texas in a great position, and this year there's a ton of excitement for what this team can do. We're going to take a deep dive into the Texas Longhorns to see what we should expect from this team in 2025. We're obviously going to talk about the biggest name, the big man on campus, in a little bit, but there's more to this team than just that. And the 2024 season kind of showed that. We saw some young guys step up. This is a team that finished 13-3, and they feel that there was plenty left on the table for them to go and get in 2025. This is a team that expects big things this season, and there's not much that is going to slow them down. Now, there are still some things they need to sort out, but the excitement surrounding this program is about as high as it's ever been. And with the new college football playoff, the expanded college football playoff, this is a team that expects to do really big things in 2025. Now, the roster is pretty good, but they did not waste any time going out to get other talent to help them. The defensive tackle position was one that Sarkisian and his staff felt they needed to address. So they bring in multiple transfers at that position. You get Murad Watson late in the transfer portal. You also bring in Cole Brevard, Travis Shaw, Hero Kano, and Levon Johnson. So that's a position they clearly felt they needed to address, especially with the NFL talent that they lost at that position. You lost some key players, guys like Vernon Broughton, Alfred Collins. Those are two guys that are going to be missed quite a bit. And when you look at the success that this team has had at that position, you feel pretty good about their ability to evaluate talent and replenish that position. There are some younger guys that could potentially step up and play a role, but right now that's a position they clearly felt was a need. They also bring in a really interesting transfer in Emmett Mosley from Stanford. We'll talk more about him and the wide receivers. But that was a really nice addition that I don't think is getting talked about a ton. Same with Jack Andrews from Cal. You have two guys that are definitely going to play big roles in this offense, and not a ton of people are talking about them. And that kind of speaks to the talent level at Texas. And when you're with the Texas Longhorns, you expect big things, and that's going to happen this year. I think that they are set for a really fun season, and a lot of that has to do with Arch Manning. And while we could sit here and talk for an entire video about Arch Manning and what Arch Manning is capable of doing this season, we can also talk about kind of the other side too. We'll start with the excitement though. Arch Manning comes to Texas with a ton of hype. You can't go 30 seconds without talking about Arch Manning when Texas is brought up, and that's the excitement that he brings. And I think the one thing that's very different with Arch Manning is I think there are some humble guys, but the humility that he brings to the table, he understands that there is a ton of hype. He understands that there's a lot of excitement surrounding his game, surrounding his abilities, but he's also very aware that he hasn't done much yet to justify that. It's purely what it is. It's hype. It's not a ton of proven hype. It's not a ton of production on the field. You've seen glimpses, obviously, and those glimpses are really what is driving this excitement. This is a guy who has the talent to be really exciting, but at the same time, when have we seen that? We've seen some moments in big games, but for the most part, his main production has come against inferior competition. So there is some validity to the people who are questioning if he's going to be good. But I think if you sit back and you watch the tape, you see a guy that has the talent to be really exciting. And I know there's an argument of, if he's so good, why didn't he beat out Quinn Ewers? That's not a very simple question that you can answer. There are so many factors that go into it. You had a veteran in Quinn Ewers that was coming back. You're not going to sit him for Arch Manning if he's playing at the level that he was playing at. It wasn't like he struggled mightily. Now, the injury probably didn't help, but you're just not going to put your guys in that position. You're just not going to. But now it's the Arch Manning era. It's time for him to show that he can lead this team. And I think it's going to be really fun. I think this is a kid who has his head on straight. He has a wealth of knowledge purely just from being in this program, but also with the family he comes from. He has a ton of advantages that a lot of other quarterbacks simply don't. And that's going to be huge. It's not just about what can he do physically. It's what can he do mentally? What does he know from being a Manning, that's going to help him in certain situations. If it's in the fourth quarter and you need a play to be made, I would feel pretty good that my quarterback, who learned from two of the better quarterbacks in the NFL, that he's going to figure things out, that he's going to deliver when this team needs plays the most. And the talent around him is going to make that very easy as well. Now, the question is, what do you have behind him? Maybe it's a Trey Owens that will be able to take over, but how do you feel about the gap between those two? Is there going to be a drop off? Everyone assumes so, obviously. That probably is maybe the bigger question, not necessarily is Arch Manning going to be good. You also brought in Matthew Caldwell from Troy. So again, kind of some unproven talent behind him. That is probably, to me, the bigger question of, if Arch Manning gets hurt, which you saw with Quinn Ewers last year, you needed Arch Manning. What happens if you need Trey Owens or Matthew Caldwell or somebody else? We don't necessarily know what that will look like. That, to me, is a bigger question than coming up with a hypothetical purely because you just maybe want to be different, or you found one little thing that you think Arch Manning isn't good at. I think that it's just inevitable that he's going to be good, and it's just going to be a matter of how great he can actually be. The talent around him, like I said, is going to make life very easy for him. And you get a group of running backs that is going to be very talented. It just comes down to the health of that group. You lost CJ Baxter and Christian Clark last year. Those are two guys that were pushing for some serious reps. I think Baxter was for sure going to be one of the guys, if not the guy. Fortunately, you had plenty of talent. You had Jaden Blue, and you had a guy in Quintrevin Wisner that was ready for his opportunity. He was ready to take the big stage, be in the spotlight, and give Texas what they needed. This is a guy who rushed for over 1,000 yards and 5 touchdowns. And this was a rushing attack that overall I think could be better. If there's an area that you're looking for improvement, running the football is definitely that area for Texas. It's not that they don't have the talent. It's not that they don't have the ability. It just comes down to, you have now continuity at the running back position, and the offensive line, who loses some key pieces, is going to have to step up in a big way. But the running back position is stacked. If you look at the hype that CJ Baxter had coming into the 2024 season, you could really rediscover that quickly, especially early in the season. You have a massive game right off the bat, and that's where a guy like CJ Baxter could play a huge role. But I think a blessing in disguise is that even though you lost key guys at this position, Wisner's ability to step up gives you confidence that we can endure some of those injuries again, because we have a guy who got great experience and really settled into his role. And now you have a really fun 1-2 punch that's going to be a little bit different than what you had with Wisner and Blue. Blue is that explosive player, kind of that gadget player that you could line up in different places. You're going to see more traditional running from Wisner and Baxter. You could also see Jarek Gibson part of that. Clark could also be part of that rotation as well. But the main thing that you take away from this is that this is a deep group when healthy. If they stay healthy, this will be a really fun group. As long as they have running lanes, as long as they stay on the field, this will be a really exciting running back room to watch in college football. Now, part of Arch Manning's hype is going to actually come from the guys that he throws to. And Texas has done a great job of recruiting at this position. And you have some young guys that saw the field last year and saw some important opportunities, and you saw them take advantage of those. So guys like Ryan Wingo, who maybe you weren't expecting him to play the role that he did, take on that responsibility. 29 catches, 472 yards, 16.3 yards per catch, and 2 touchdowns as a freshman. DeAndre Moore as a sophomore, 39 catches, 456 yards, 11.7 yards per catch, and 7 touchdowns. Now you're going to have to replace Matthew Golden. You're going to have to replace Isaiah Bond. But overall, I think if you ask Texas fans how they feel pretty good about having Wingo and Moore back for sure. You also have a freshman in Khalil Lockett, who everything I've heard and everything I read says that he is ready for his opportunity and he is not waiting around. Similar to what Ryan Wingo did, you will probably see Khalil Lockett play a big role in this offense, and that's super exciting. We talked about Emmett Mosley before, and Stanford is in a real tough place. This is a program that has struggled with a lot of things in the new era of college football, but it hasn't stopped them from producing some intriguing talent. Now, Emmett Mosley is going to be part of this rotation. He is a solid piece to have. He is kind of that veteran presence that you bring in, and a guy who's been through plenty of adversity being from Stanford. He had 48 catches last year, 525 yards, and 6 touchdowns. When you put that the context of playing for Stanford and their struggles, makes those numbers even more impressive. Having a guy who's proven like that to join Wingo and more gives you another guy who has been through it. He understands what it takes. He understands what it's like to be on the field. And that's going to help some of these younger guys. Lockett is a new face to this offense. Parker Livingstone's a redshirt freshman. Michael Terry III is a freshman. You have a lot of young players that are going to step in for the first time at college, and they are going to have some growing pains. They are going to need to get some education on how to do certain things. How do I run this route? How do I create spacing for my quarterback? How do I get the timing down for Arch Manning to hit me downfield? That's another element that if you're concerned about Arch Manning, that's a legitimate element that you could be concerned about, is the timing of the routes, the freshness of the talent that is coming into this rotation. But at the same time, if you're going to trust someone to get it all figured out, it's going to be this coaching staff. Steve Sarkisian is one of the most brilliant offensive minds that's in the game right now. And I trust that he understands, at worst, how to dial up individual matchups where guys can get open and make really easy throws for his quarterback. Another element of that is you bring in Jack Endries from Cal, 56 catches for him, 623 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That is someone who, again, gives you that solid presence, that reliable player, that if Arch Manning is in trouble, you probably know that he's going to be open. You feel comfortable at least betting on that, and that gives you kind of that safety valve to be able to hit downfield. So the tight end position could play a role with him being here. Behind him, you have kind of the same thing as the wide receivers. You have some young players that are super exciting. I think there are multiple players, Spencer Shannon, Jordan Washington, Amari Winston. Those are guys that you could see potentially in this rotation and be a part of this passing attack. And Texas is going to be full of opportunities for guys to step up. And this offense will give guys the chance to show that they're ready for their opportunity. And it doesn't matter if you're an older guy or a younger guy. But this offense did some growing up last year, and they kind of needed that. For the long term of this program, you kind of needed some young guys like a Ryan Wingo, like DeAndre Moore, to grow and mature in 2024. And that's going to help you in 2025. Now, part of that is also going to be what happens up front. This offensive line has a lot of new faces to the starting lineup. They may not be new to the program, but they are new to the roles that they will inherit. You do have quite a bit of experience, though. So even though you see someone like Brandon Baker, who's going to be competing with Andre Kojo for that right tackle spot, that is relative inexperience, but they've been around long enough to know that you saw what the expectation was last year. You know what Kyle Flood is going to ask of you, and you know what Texas needs from you to be successful. And while you only have one guy in DJ Campbell that started more than 2 games for you last year, you feel pretty good about the experience you have coming back. Cole Hudson at centers has 38 games of experience. He also has 13 starts in his career. You have Trevor Gooseby, who started 2 games last year and played 15 games. You have plenty of talent. That is not a question. Talent is never going to be a question at Texas. Steve Sarkisian's recruited at a high level, and he's done a good job of ensuring that the offensive line with Kyle Flood is going to be one of the better groups in the country. Now, this year, it might take a little bit of time. It might take a little bit for them to sort things out, to get chemistry. You also have a center that is going to have to learn the tendencies of Arch Manning and the expectations from Arch Manning. That is going to take some time as well, but you've had opportunities in spring, you'll have opportunities in the fall. And if you're a Texas fan, you should still expect some of those big things to happen once again. And it might take a little bit for this group to gel. Like I said, there are a lot of guys that are either coming into the picture for the first time or they are taking on new roles. So it might take some time for them to gel. And having the expectation that you need to compete right off the bat might be a really good thing for them, to know that they don't have time to coast into the season or ease into the season might get this group focused earlier than expected. And maybe the defense has to do more right off the bat. Maybe the defense truly has to be the group that honestly they are capable of being. And it's going to start up front. And this is a defensive line that even with the turnover on the interior, you feel really good about. Ethan Burke and Colin Simmons are going to be a problem. Colin Simmons by himself is, to me, he's the best defensive end in college football. I think that he is so explosive. It just has the ability to do everything, and teams know that he's going to be a problem. Teams know what he is capable of. Now, that being said, if you're going to leave Ethan Burke with more favorable opportunities, I don't necessarily know if that's the smartest decision either. Now, is Ethan Burke as talented as Colin Simmons? No, definitely not. However, Ethan Burke is still a problem. 27 tackles last year, 9 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. He is a very talented player. He just doesn't get the hype that Colin Simmons does, which is going to benefit him tremendously because teams are not going to really worry about him as much, and that's going to give him a lot of chances to make big plays. Now, the depth behind them, you maybe don't have as much confidence in that, but you do have a Colton Vasek coming back, 7 tackles for him, 3 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. After that, again, kind of other positions, you have younger players, you have new players that are coming into the program for the first time or are just relatively new, and that's going to take some time to sort things out. Depth might be the concern up front for the most part. Now, the defensive tackle, nose tackle positions are going to be up in the air right now because there is so much competition, which is not a bad thing. I think that it is a good thing to have this much talent to sort through because odds are you probably aren't going to hit on all of these guys. Now, you feel good about 3 for sure. Cole Brevard, Travis Shaw, and Murad Watson. Now, if you see Murad Watson starting, I can get behind that as well. I do like what Travis Shaw brings to the table, and all 3 of them with their size keep the tradition going at Texas for having just these big body players that are going to show signs of explosiveness that you don't expect. And that's going to help this group continue doing what it's doing. This is a team that was the 13th best rush defense last year. That all starts on the interior. That starts up front, and they have guys that are ready to do that. Now, Travis Shaw in North Carolina maybe didn't play to his potential, but I trust that Texas is going to get the most out of him. They are going to get every ounce of greatness out of him, and that'll be really fun to watch. You also have Hero Kanan, we talked about him. You have a number of other players that are going to either be coming in from the transfer portal or are younger players that could be part of the rotation as well. There is a ton of competition, and that's a good thing if you're Texas, especially if you're going to make another run in the college football playoff. The trenches have to be deep. And if the trenches are deep, you feel pretty good about your ability to make plays, even when your starters go off the field, but it's also going to help the guys behind them. Now, you do return a good group of linebackers, so it's not that you need a ton of help in that category, but it's not going to hurt either. Anthony Hill Jr. is an absolute stud. 113 tackles, 17 tackles for loss, 8 sacks, 4 forced fumbles, 1 interception. A second team all SEC selection last year. He is going to be fun to watch on Sundays as well. You also have Trey Moore coming back. Now, Trey Moore initially was not viewed as a success. The first half of the season was a struggle for him last year. Kind of figured things out and actually became quite a force for this team. 35 tackles, 10 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. He is someone that is making the transition to linebacker, and it sounds like everything is going really well. It sounds like he is comfortable in that, and he's a competitor, and he's figuring it out. The nice thing, too, is that you have a group of 4 guys here that you feel confident in with their ability to produce, that if you need, we talked about the depth and maybe the concerns at the edge positions in terms of depth. If you need to give Colin Simmons or Ethan Burke a break and you need somebody, Trey Moore can be that situational edge rusher, which also then gives you an opportunity to put Brad Spence, who comes in from Arkansas, on the field. You also could put Leona Lefau on the field as well. And both of those guys were extremely productive. Lefau for Texas, obviously 63 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. Brad Spence, 54 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks. So the depth at linebacker gives you some flexibility, and that's really nice. That's something that not a lot of teams have, because Trey Moore's flexibility and versatility gives you those opportunities. So even if you have some depth concerns, you can put a guy like him in a position to give you that flexibility, even if you don't have it naturally at that position. Trey Moore is a natural edge rusher who can figure that out. He's obviously learning his new position, but it's kind of like riding a bike. He's going to be able to figure it out in a pinch. He's going to step up. He's a competitor. He wants to win. And with how things have gone for him, I don't expect that he'll struggle by any means if that has to happen. That's going to be huge, because this is a group that can get to the quarterback, can be disruptive, and it's going to help a secondary that doesn't exactly need a ton of help, honestly. You do lose Andrew Makuba, but the safety position is in good hands with Michael Taft coming back. Now, who plays opposite him right now is probably the biggest question. I really like Derek Williams Jr. I like his size at 6'2", 201 pounds, but there are plenty of other options that I can hear an argument for. Someone like Jordan Johnson-Rubel, Jonah Williams, there are plenty of safeties that are going to compete for a spot on the field and in this rotation. Michael Taft is obviously a great story for Texas. You don't get a ton of underdog stories with the Texas Longhorns. Michael Taft is a great story if you don't know that already. 78 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 10 passes defended, 2 interceptions, 1 forced fumble. This kid plays like an underdog. He plays with a chip on his shoulder, and he's easy to root for. And he plays at a level that lets him play in the SEC. So it's not just the underdog story. He has the talent to be really good, and this team is better because of that. The one guy that everybody is probably going to know besides him is Malik Muhammad. This is a guy who has a bright future in the NFL, can be that shutdown corner for this defense. And this is a defense that was very good against the pass last year. The 7th best defense against the pass, and they should repeat that success. Opposite of him, you have Jalen Gilbo. He is going to be someone that gets tested quite a bit. Malik Muhammad, obviously, they're not going to ignore him, but if there is a conversation about who they're going to test, it's probably going the other way. But I don't think that either option is great, honestly. We also talk about the safety position. Maybe there's going to be some rotation there. Jelani McDonald is going to play that star or nickelback position for Texas. He is someone that could also potentially play safety. But you're going to have to find ways to get him on the field. You have to ensure also that that nickel position, the star position, doesn't get abandoned. Maybe you have guys behind him that you feel confident where you could move him to safety if things don't work out. But I like what this group has coming back. I like what they could be in 2025. And if they had success last year with what they had, even with some of the losses they sustained, I feel really good about what they can do in 2025 with the talent they have coming back and the talent that they have stepping in to those new positions. And like I said, this defense might be asked or called upon early in the season to step up in a big way. You are traveling to Ohio State to play arguably the biggest game of the season right off the bat. You're playing the defending national champs on the road. You're playing a team that you lost to last year. You're playing against a team that this secondary understands what they have to do. They understand that number 4, Jeremiah Smith, is going to present a ton of challenges. And I'm excited to see what those 2 corners can do. I'm excited to see what this defensive line can do against Ohio State's offensive line. And I'm excited to watch the Arch Manning, Julian Sayin back and forth. These are 2 guys with a lot of excitement, a lot of talent, and it'll be fun because early in the season, you're going to see struggles. It's not going to be their peak performance, and you shouldn't expect that. Teams are not at their peak right off the bat, but it's going to be a battle. You're going to see which team is more prepared for adversity, which team is more prepared for the situation, for the spotlight, for anything regarding this game. Once you get past that, you do play 3 games that will give you a little bit of a breather. Now, San Jose State could give you some problems early. I think that is a very fun team in the Mountain West, but it is not going to be a close game by any means. Texas should take care of business. So you do have 3 opportunities, should you lose that first game, to get 3 wins right away. You get a much needed bye week after that because this next stretch doesn't let you return to Texas, or to say return home to your home field until November. You're playing Sam Houston on September 20th. The next home game is not until November 1st. You go at Florida, the rivalry game with Oklahoma, at Kentucky, at Mississippi State, Vanderbilt at home in November 1st. Now, the Florida and Oklahoma games will provide some challenges. I think Texas is right now in a better place than Oklahoma, but that is still a rivalry game that we've seen in the past. It doesn't matter which team is better. That will be tough. Kentucky and Mississippi State, not so much, though those games are on the road. Vanderbilt is better, but Vanderbilt is better than they used to be, but Texas is the better team. They are definitely the better team there. I don't have concerns. However, you can't get caught looking ahead 2 weeks from then because the Georgia game is one that this team obviously understands what happened last year. Everybody knows it. Anybody that talks college football is discussing what happened last year. They know what happened. They know that Texas came up short. That is a big game. However, Steve Sarkisian and his staff know that this team has to be all about business. They have to be able to dial in to Vanderbilt, arguably just as much as they have to dial in to a road trip to Georgia. They know that it's week by week. They can't get caught looking ahead. And that will really dictate how prepared this team is to make a run at a national championship. After the Georgia game, you have Arkansas and Texas A&M at home. Arkansas honestly could go either way. They're not going to be in the same level as Texas, but we're going to know if they have a new head coach or if they're playing really well. So that could be an interesting test. The Texas A&M game is going to be a tough one, and that's just life in the SEC. Now, I'd love to just say that Texas can go 12-0, but when you look at this schedule, I think you kind of have to be realistic that there aren't going to be many teams that go 12-0 in this new college football playoff era. The fact that you also have a road trip to Ohio State, a road trip to Florida, a neutral site against Oklahoma, a road trip to Georgia. Your road schedule is brutal. And that also still includes Kentucky and Mississippi State. Your games away from home are tough. Now, if they put everything together, it would 11-1 would be a really good season. I think at the ceiling, that's where this team is at. Now, those games that I just listed also mean that this team could be 8-4. However, that's if things are really going wrong. I don't foresee that happening, but there's a lot of turnover on that offense that needs to get sorted out. So we'll see how well and how quickly they can get along in that first half of the season, which has some tough games. Now, 78% of you think that they are going to be first through fourth. I would imagine that is going to be first or second, honestly. 12% of you say 5th through 8th. I would be kind of surprised if they were there. The 08-4 could put them in that position. 3% of you think 9th through 12th, and 7% must be Oklahoma or Texas A&M fans that say 13th through 16th. I would be floored if that happens. But maybe those are the people that don't believe in Arch Manning. Regardless, this is going to be a fun year. Texas is under spotlight, and for good reason. You have a lot of talent, you have a lot of excitement, and if they're able to put things together, this could be a special team with a ton of young talent that, by the way, could run it back. And even if they don't win it this year, this is a team that it will be fun to watch them in 2026 as well. So this could be a stepping stone for a young team that is looking to grow up. But if they're ahead of schedule, this is still a dangerous team in 2025.